Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Bullshit. I am your host, Dr. Stephanie Snyder, and I am a high performance mentor. Through my unique blend of strategy, mindset, and intuition, I help men and women to cut through the BS in order to create the life and business they desire. So, I love this topic. I'm just gonna riff on it because it's really, really good. So, I had this download come through while I was in the shower, and it is all around intention. And this was actually my word for 2024, was intentional, on purpose and with purpose. And today we're going to talk about the person that you want to become doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intention. So you're not going to accidentally wake up. Like, you're not going to wake up and accidentally be healthy or be wealthy or have a time freedom, money freedom, right? Like, these things are things that happen intentionally, on purpose, right? And so if you're not there in a space that you want to be, whether it's your financial health, whether it's your physical health, whether it's your spiritual health, there are steps that you can take to get there, because who you are right now didn't happen by accident. It may feel like it, right? If you were lacking in intention, it may feel like you got here accidentally. But there were actually many decisions along the way that got you to where you are today. And if you aren't happy with it, that's okay. The very first thing you're going to have to do is decide who you want to be, and then make decisions according to that person, right? So this is something that I have been working on, obviously, a lot in the last year, was being even more intentional with my time, with my money, with my energy, because the truth of it is those are our resources. And when we're overwhelmed, it's because we have not allocated those resources appropriately. And so when you start to get intentional, it's gonna feel weird. But it's by intention that you actually get where you want to go. The rest of the time, you may just be drifting through life. This is why very often around this time of year, people go, holy crap, I made how much and I have nothing to show for it? Well, you were lacking in intention. Money was, you weren't giving yourself a choice when it came to money. It was simply habitual. And the way to change that, and this is something that I talked about on a previous episode, is to slow down. If you want to become intentional with something, you want to change something, you've got to slow it down. So what is this all, why, right? I had a professor in my Ph.D. program that used to say, yeah, and so what, right? So what was what he said a lot. So what? So what? Right? And I'm reflecting on this because it's becoming apparent to me. I had this conversation with a girlfriend where she was telling me about why she runs. She doesn't run to break any kind of records, right? She was like, I run so that I can be healthy when my grandkids come around. And I thought, oh, that's such a good reason to get up and run, right? To stay fit for future generations, right? Like, I know that I don't ever want to be that grandparent that can't be active with their grandkids, or doesn't want to be active with their grandkids, right? Like, I don't ever want to be that grandparent. And so I am being intentional as to what that looks like, right? So very active. I swim, I bike, I run, do yoga. I make sure that I'm eating well, because I don't want to grow old and not have my health, right? And this was a conversation that my son had. He was like, well, Mom, I don't want to live to be 110 like you do. And I said, honey, it's not about living until I'm 110. It's about having a quality of life regardless of how old I live to, right? So making those decisions to not drink soda every day, to not eat junk food every day, to not have sugar every day, those are impacting the future me, and they're only going to benefit me. And so it becomes very easy to make those decisions. There's no willpower required because it's not a personality change, right? It's a character change. It's being intentional on purpose and with purpose. And so to become the person that you want to be 15, 20, 30 years from now, that doesn't start then. That actually starts now with the decisions that you're making today. Now, before you get yourself into this analysis paralysis kind of thing and not make any decisions, this is actually quite easy, right? So once you know who you want to be, right, whether that's active with your grandkids, have generational wealth started with you, those kinds of things, those kind of decisions are actually fundamental to now because they're built upon. Like I said, it's not going to be by accident that you create generational wealth. That's going to be very much intentional. And it's not going to be by accident that your kids get really good at handling money or know the value of healthy eating, right? That stuff doesn't happen by accident, it happens by intention. And one of the things that has been very intentional for me is to be present with my kids as they grow up. And so time freedom is paramount to my vision, right? I don't ever want to work a 9 to 5, ever, right? I was thinking about this morning, being grateful because my kids had a 2-hour delay because the temperatures were really cold today. We got no snow. We're in Virginia Beach, so we don't get snow very often. But the temperatures were real cold and we had a lot of rain yesterday. So there was a lot of ice everywhere. And bringing my kids to school for a 2-hour delay, I was so grateful that I didn't have to rush to the office or had to coordinate somebody else taking my kids to school because I had to be at the office anyways, right? But that came with intention. That was a vision that I had prior to even having kids, was I'm going to be home with my kids, right? I don't know what that looks like, but that was the thing. And there were decisions that were made in order to facilitate that, right? But it didn't happen by accident. And I remember one of my mentors was talking about the level of intentionality, and I've shared this before, the level of intentionality in her life. And I remember hearing it and immediately thinking at that time, oh my God, that has to be so exhausting to be that intentional, because I had defined intention as being anal and controlling. That was my definition of the time when I heard one of my mentors say that. And I thought, oh God, like I want no part of that. But as I redefined intention for myself as on purpose and with purpose, it became a no-brainer, right? Like, I'm going to be intentional because I want to create something. Now, there's one thing that I can feel people start to get caught up with here is a timeline, right? Especially this time of year. People are setting goals and they're saying, I want to achieve this by the end of the year. I want to achieve that by the end of the year. I want to have this thing. I want to have had this and that kind of thing, right? And while there's nothing wrong with setting goals, I think it's great. Some of those goals don't have to be met in a certain time period. In fact, when you take the time pressure off of it, it becomes easier to achieve it because it's not so forced. It happens much more natural. It happens with a whole lot more ease, right? So you can sit here and say, you know what, by March, I want to have a 10K month. Well, if you're at $0 right now, there's going to be a lot of pressure to make 10K by March. But if you say, I'm growing my business to 10K, 20K months, you've taken the time pressure off of it, but you've also given yourself the ability to kind of do it any way you want, right? And that's kind of the point, because you can't really screw this up. And I see this a lot is we get so fearful of taking action that we're going to screw it up. But the truth is, it's in the screw up, it's in the failure that you find the way that actually works best for you. Because if you're not willing to try something, you don't really know how it's going to work. You can theorize on it all day long, but until you actually apply it, it doesn't really matter. And that's probably the biggest thing that I want to get at here is it's not enough just to know who you want to be. You have to actually apply those decisions and make them differently. Because if you're not where you want to be with your finances, with your health, with your relationships, then it's time to make different decisions, different choices here. Because ultimately those things are in your control. And as I tell people, you can't do better until you know better. Right? And so when you see somebody achieve something that you want to achieve, whether it's financial independence or, losing weight, or a great marriage, right? Those people are great people to learn from because they've probably tried a bunch of things that worked and didn't work and can probably shortcut that for you. They can be like, oh, actually, here's the thing that worked better for me, right? So I know as a mom of 4, there are a whole lot of shortcuts that I found out the hard way. Right? Like, there is a lot of mistakes that I made as a mom so far. But I've learned from most of them, not all of them, right? Still make mistakes, still human. But when somebody comes to me and says, hey, how do you manage, to keep your head on straight with 4 kids in sports all year round, right? Well, the very first thing I'll tell them is that it's actually not all year round, and I've learned how to say no. That was probably paramount because my oldest daughter, she would be in every activity known to man if I let her. Because she just wants to do all the things, right? But we set a boundary when the kids were younger. My husband started to travel more. I said, listen, I am one person. So each kid gets 1 activity per season. That's it. That's all I can commit to. Because I don't want to be the mom that is running from this thing to that thing every single day of the week. Now, sometimes it does look like that, right? Fortunately, all of the soccer activities are relatively close to my home, so that's really helpful, right? But that was a boundary that I had to put in place because I had a young daughter that wanted to do dance, and she wanted to ride horses, and she wanted to, do soccer and basketball and volleyball and all the things, and I could have just kept saying yes. But that wasn't going to be enjoyable for me 5-10 years down the road, not to mention the rest of the kids, right? And so that was a boundary that I had to put in place as a mom. You get 1 activity per kid per season. Now we have bent that a little bit based off of school sports, right? My kids do school sports and travel sports. So it is bent a little bit, right? But that's because we want them to be able to play with their classmates. But when it comes to other kinds of advice, right? Like there's stuff that I learned the hard way. I know that my messages land when I'm sharing from the heart and not overthinking it. Now that's sometimes easier said than done, right? But again, there were things that I had to learn the hard way by accident to become more intentional. And so if there is something that you feel is missing, find the person that is doing that thing and figure out how they did it, right? Ask questions, learn something. I've shared this before that this year we're expanding our investments. And so I am learning a lot about stocks and options and real estate and what that all looks like. And there's people that I have to talk to because they have the success in that area already. And I'm like, okay, hey, let me pick your brain because this doesn't totally make sense to me. Can you break it down for me? Cool, perfect, awesome, right? It's okay to learn from other people. You don't have to make all the mistakes on your own to figure it out. Other people are going to have shortcuts for you, right? Like I shared, have boundaries around your after-school activities. My kids know that Memorial Day weekend to the first part of August, there are no formalized sports, right? Like, no. We operate on everybody else's schedule from August to May, that June and July, nothing. Like we're not doing camps, we're not, you know, organizing this thing or that thing, right? Like you're not doing a summer league of something. No, because I love my summers with my kids where we have that flexibility. But that was something that I learned from watching other people be exhausted over summer camps. I was like, that's not for me. I don't want to do that. And so I knew that I wanted summers with my kids, so I had to set things in place to do that. Same thing, right? I knew I wanted to stay home with my kids. I had to set things up. I had to have systems in place for these kinds of things. I had to predetermine, right? I had to know ahead of time what my limits were to say, okay, no, this is a no for me. This is a no for me. In your relationships, right? This is a no for me. What are the boundaries here? Being intentional will get you where you want to go. You're not going to create the life you want by accident. It's just not going to happen, right? You're going to get somewhere by accident, but probably not where you want to be, right? That's like, again, I use this map decision. That's like saying, okay, I'm going to get to California, but I'm not going to use a GPS. Oh, no map either? Like you could use a paper map. Nope. No, I'm just going to wing it. Just going to wing it. I'm going to get in my car. I'm just going to start driving west. It's going to take you a long time to get to California without clear directions. You could get there. You could not get there. Like, I don't know. I don't know if you'll get there. But if you are intentional and you create a plan, you have an idea, you have a vision of what you want your life to look like, you're going to get there. Doesn't matter how long it takes. It'll happen. And so it's about being intentional about those decisions, because it is those small daily decisions that actually have a greater impact than the big ones, right? You want to get those big decisions right, where you work, where you live, who you marry, those kinds of things, right? But it's actually these smaller decisions that have a larger trajectory, a larger impact on even those big decisions. Because where you live, right, where you work, those things are going to have impacts on who you meet, all that kind of stuff, right? So we landed the ship, I hope, on this one. There were a lot of ideas, a lot of rabbit trails that I wanted to go down on this one, but I'm going to end it all with that, just that analogy, right? If you want to get to California, you've got to have a bit of a plan to get there. So if you want to create a life of financial freedom, of time freedom, of generational wealth, you've got to make a plan to get there. And you can start now. It's never too late. It's never too early, never too old, never too young, right? But it starts with making the decisions on where you want to be, not where you are. So I'm sending you so much love. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day. And as always, be you, because the world needs more of you. Bye, love.